Shalom, shalom. It's great to be here today with Professor Mira Benjamin, who is Associate Professor of Jewish Studies at Mount Holyoke College and is the author of The Obligated Self, Maternal Subjectivity and Jewish Thought, published in 2018, Indiana Press, which actually just won an award, Mazel Tov.
Thank you.
From the American Academy of Religion, 2019 Award of Excellence in Study of Religion. So thank you for taking time to talk with me.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So in thinking about Jewish feminist thought today, I guess my first question for you is, what are some of the challenges that you had to overcome to endure, to be where you are today? And what are suggestions you have for women who want to pursue careers in academia also?
Well, I feel really lucky that I came of age in a time when a lot of other people had opened doors for women, for lesbians, for other people that really, they had to do a lot of hard work. They had to endure a lot. And because of them, I didn't have to do so much of that. I definitely encountered people's expectations here and there that, it's too hard for you or whatever. But for the most part, I've been very fortunate. And that's not to say that people who are of my cohort or younger aren't still facing structural issues pressures, but I feel like a lot of hard work happened before me.
Yeah, amazing. So when you look back at philosophers, you think of people like Plato and Maimonides and Kant and Rawls, people who held male privilege, and I wonder how does that influence the kind of ideas that were generated throughout our philosophical tradition? Broader Western philosophy, and how does the emergence of more women in this arena potentially influence how ideas will be generated?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I noticed and that just shouts out to me is what is considered philosophy and how do you do it and what does it look like to do it? Philosophy in many parts of Western tradition, Jewish, but also Christian, elsewhere, it's this thing that you go kind of to a desert island and you stare at your navel or at the clouds or whatever, and you're isolated, right? You're not doing it in the midst of taking care of other people, being responsive to other people. Now, Jewish thought is a little different because it really does imagine people to be immersed in these webs of relationships. And I don't want to sort of overgeneralize what philosophy has been, but I do think that there's still a basic assumption that that we've seen in male-generated philosophy, that's what it looks like to do philosophy, is to be a man and to be immersed in all kinds of things that are the life of the mind and the life of male community that are quite removed from the world of daily obligation. And so part of what I wanted to do with my book is to think about how we might think differently about what really is, what's the place out of which thinking emerges and intellectual life and existential questions.
Right, amazing. So academia is oftentimes thought of as dealing with issues of the ivory tower, detached, as you started to mention, divorced from a lot of real life concerns. And how can this concerns for the welfare and status and inclusion and beyond for women actually affect the general position of women in the 21st century America?
Well, I think, there is still a lot of work to be done on many angles, but I'm hoping that we can really expand what we think of as the place of sort of ordinary life, ordinary concerns, the workaday world, as being a place where we can actually take that seriously, take seriously the people who are kind of thinking in very reflective ways about these basic concerns and say, that's where philosophy might happen. Now, there are structural challenges of academia and other things, but I have hope that we'll get there.
Yeah. How do you understand the relationship between ritual inclusion or religious-based inclusion and societal justice? Do you see those as completely separate spheres or interconnected?
You mean Jewish ritual inclusion?
Well, just in general, sort of that what happens in houses of worship and how that impacts other issues of equity.
Yeah, great. Well, To my mind, it's totally clear that the feminist movement, a social justice movement, which is tied to civil rights movement and other social justice movements, was the main catalyst for Jews thinking about, wait a minute, why is my religious life so totally out of sync with what I'm hearing on the streets and in conversations? And so, to me, the social justice political imperative was the thing that drove ritual change. And then actually I think that the ritual change is what started driving theological change. When you could start imagining a synagogue or a worship space or blessing a new baby girl with the same ritual, as you would a baby boy in Jewish culture, that's when people start thinking, wait a minute, how have I been thinking about God? How have I been thinking about what it means to be human? Maybe I should be thinking differently. So I see it as a kind of cascading effect that starts with the political, the social justice, and then moves, or at least descriptively has moved into then religious and ritual life, and then into theology.
Interesting. So looking at Jewish institutions in America today, do you feel that overall the Jewish community is doing a good job on this front, and what areas could be, where could things be better?
Yeah, great. Well, I think there's a long way to go. I think that Jewish institutional life, we've certainly read a lot in the last couple of years, at least, about Me Too issues, which go very deep, right? That goes to how is power allocated? It goes to very basic concerns about access. And I think when you look at it, and you see a lot of people have been working on this, thank God, Schiffer Bronsnick and many others have been really agitating for changes in the Jewish institutional world. When you look at how many women are the heads of major synagogues, things like that. I mean, there's just a long way to go till we get to parity. There's certainly plenty of other things as well, right? Whether we're talking about queer issues, Jews of color, right? I see those as tied to feminist issues, right? They're intersectional. So there's plenty of places to go. At the same time, one thing that's really been striking to me as a teacher is when I teach a thinker like Judith Plaskow, right? This classic text, it's 30 years old, basically. They read it and they're sort of horrified to really grapple with the nature of Jewish sources being so thoroughly patriarchal. But what they're also trying to make sense of is the fact that the Judaism that they grew up in doesn't look like that. It looks egalitarian. It looks like it's feminist, and it is feminist. So I feel like we've come a long way, and also there's plenty of ways to go.
Yeah, I mean, I exist in multiple spaces, as I'm sure you do. And when I'm involved in the Jewish Social Justice Roundtable, that feels like an emerging paradigm of ideals.
Yes.
Where looking at the dozens of Jewish social justice groups, I feel like a minority as a man in a good way, in terms of those who are leaders. There's certainly structural barriers there as well, but lots of progress. So I think my last question, although I'm not committed to that, that often a woman's traditional role has been to maintain the household and take care of children. And you go into great length at this in your exciting new book. How could a critical analysis of these topics in the Jewish tradition contribute to Jewish thought at large?
Great. Well, so the first thing is I would just want to say I think it's very tempting to kind of cast a certain Victorian bourgeois model of family life where women are a part of this private sphere and men are a part of the public sphere. It's easy for us to sort of imagine that that's always how it was. And that's not true, right? That's a recent invention that you even have that model that people would aspire to. So the first thing is that women have always been part of multiple spheres, part of the production of ideas, part of the production of economic goods, all kinds of things. So women have always been there. At the same time, there's certain gaps that are really clear to me, or that became very clear to me when I was working on this book, which is that we have very little about the felt experience of what it is to engage in these daily, repetitive, often kind of messy, smelly, other kinds of work that we have to do when we're nurturing other people. And so part of my hope is to both rewrite that story in which women have been only merely in the domestic sphere, but also to rewrite the story that the domestic sphere is sort of this second best, but to actually to say, look, the work of caring for young children, as anyone out there knows who has done it, is really deeply profound, right? You are involved in another human being's formation, and that's not just about having biological children, that's about shaping who they are as a person. It's about confronting the nature of your power and the limits of your power. It's about all kinds of things that I see as like the critical religious questions. So that's what I have hoped to do with the book.
Oh, amazing. So I was wrong. One last question.
Okay, sure.
What is my job? What is my job today as a man on this front? So I think a lot about what it means to be an ally to the LGBTQ community. I think a lot about what it means as a white person to be an ally to people of color.
Yeah.
A lot about what it means to be an ally to other minorities, Muslims and asylum seekers and like. But as a Jewish man in Jewish thought spaces, what is our job today? I mean, many of us talk about how we won't have panels of just men.
Oh yes.
And we talk about to ensure there are women's voices on our source sheets and things like this. But on a meta level, like what in 2020. How can we be challenged, Jewish men in thought spaces today, to be more thoughtful?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think all of those things that you mentioned are really important starting places, and they're symbolic, but they're also real, right? Like, who am I engaged in conversation with? Whose ideas am I looking to for kind of as the touchstones, right? And it's very easy, and I check myself in this too, right? Whose thought is thought, right? Whose voices matter. So I think, even though we can say, oh, just citing women or something, that's actually really important, certainly in academia and also beyond academia, to say, who are the people who are producing theology? Who are the people who I want to learn from? And then taking a step back and watching them. And I also tried, I have my own privilege as a senior academic, right? This is a very unusual kind of work that I have that, and so for me, thinking, constantly reminding myself, who are the graduate students who are out there doing really great stuff, and they're often, if they're adjuncts, they're in marginal positions. How can I try to lift up their work? So I think we all have these ways in which we can sort of try to recognize our privilege and take a step back.
Yeah. Starting with humility, I guess. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Fascinating. Friends, be sure to check out Professor Benjamin's work, and in particular this book. There's been a lot of amazing buzz. The Obligated Self, Maternal Subjectivity, and Jewish Thought. We'll have 2 more recordings coming soon. Thanks so much.